Hi, Shona here with another Into the Bible video. And what this is we're just reading through the Gospel of Matthew, just seeing what God's message is for us. And how we're helping discover that is using the theme, are we elevating man over God or God over man? So anyway, Matthew 7 is a verse or a chapter that's just really rich in insights and lots of places for us to go. Starts out with, it opens with us, basically, it talks about judging. And then it goes on and it ends on talking about a firm foundation that's available to all of us. Well, between that judgment part and that firm foundation part is a great meaty sandwich of that. It could be a little bit confusing as to how do we work that judging in with making sure that we're getting, presenting, and aligning ourselves with people with a firm foundation. So, what I honed in on when I was reading it was verse 17. And basically, that talks about that a good tree cannot produce, or a good tree produces good fruit, and a bad tree produces bad fruit. You go on to verse 16, and it gets even a little bit more specific and drives the point home a little bit more, saying that a good tree cannot produce bad fruit and a bad tree cannot produce good fruit. Well, just so we're kind of clear what fruit is, good fruit is identified in Galatians 2. It has a list, and I'm just going to read that list to you. It includes love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness, self control. And all of these are outward manifestations when we choose in our lives to elevate God over man and over ourselves. So it seems like this would be really easy, right? Just look at somebody and you can look and see all these manifestations and say, okay, that person's a good tree. Or this person doesn't distribute or doesn't display all of those things or any of these things, so they're a bad fruit. But it's not always easy, because when we go a little bit further in this middle part of chapter 7, I noticed that it it distinguishes that there are people that are working for Jesus that Jesus doesn't recognize. So I'm thinking, okay, well, how can they recognize him? They must be doing some things right, but they must be missing the boat somewhere. So that leads me to believe that all people that are claiming to be Christian and working for Jesus, even though they might look like it, maybe they're not really genuine Jesus followers. And so, for the most part, it's okay that if it's just someone next to me in the pew or someone I know, my next door neighbor, or some other Christian that I encounter someplace else, it's really not for me to know what their heart is. I don't have to sit there and think, oh, are they bad fruit or good fruit? It's really not for me to judge. However, in the context of what they're talking about, if you go back up to verse 15, it's talking about false prophets. Well, usually false prophets are more like public people, and um, they are out and about in front of other people professing things. So I think that that would include all public figures, maybe in the Christian realm, like preachers, national preachers, preachers maybe you see on TV, well-known Bible teachers, things like that. So I think when it does come to public figures, that it is important for us to be able to discern who might be a good tree producing good fruit and who might be a bad tree producing bad fruit. Thus, someone in the public realm that we just might want to avoid and maybe not read any of their books or align ourselves with them or do studies with. We might want to align ourselves and seek out people that are more fall in the category of being the good trees. I hope that doesn't sound judgmental, because I'm not trying to be judgmental. I'm just trying to really seek out and find the truth so that I can make sure that I'm getting good information. So this can be tricky. And, all I want to do is I want to recognize truth and non-truth, and I want to make sure I'm aligned with the truthful part of it. So I came up with two situations that I encountered as I was pondering this message. And the first one involves a conference that I attended several years ago with a friend of mine. It was a conference held at a mainstream denomination church, which there's nothing wrong with that. And so the first night we listened to the gentleman, and he had a different perspective, which we were open to. We wanted to listen and we wanted to expand our horizons. So we thought, this is pretty interesting. So we went home that night, kind of sharing what we thought about it. And we really didn't have any red flags or anything. We thought, I think that I can look at things from this guy's angle and maybe learn some things and broaden my horizons. Well, the next day, the conference went the morning and part of the afternoon. And when we got finished with it all, we got into the car and we kind of looked at each other. And both of us were a little bit disturbed. We really couldn't put our finger on it, but something wasn't resonating. Something he had said, some things he had done, just made some red flags go up. So my friend said, I've got a book written by this guy, and I'm going to go home and read it, and then I'll send it up to you, because we lived in different towns. He goes, I'll send it to you, and you can read it, and we can just kind of get a feel for what this guy is saying, and if we're right to be disturbed, or if whatever. So she read the book and called me and she said, Shona, she said, I read his book. This is not good stuff. I'm going to send it up to you. Please don't pass it on. I don't want anybody getting hold of this. Well, naturally, I was curious. So when it came, I sat down and I read the book. Well, there were a lot of things in it that disturbed me. But the one notable thing that I remember, this guy was very dismissive of prophecy. He said that prophecy doesn't matter, that we don't need to concern ourselves with it. And it doesn't really, for me, have to be theological. I figure if something's in the Bible, and I know the Bible and I'm somewhat familiar with it, I know that anything that's in the Bible, I don't need to dismiss. I need to at least pay some attention to it and see what I can glean from it. So that was one thing that just disturbed me. So I decided that this was a teacher that I didn't want to align myself, because I didn't feel that a lot of things he was sharing were truth and were good fruit. Now, the second search situation is a teacher he's a famous Bible teacher, very well known, and has a huge following, and has his teachings are broadcast on TV. Well, one day he was teaching about prayer and said, you know what? Just pray what you want to God and believe it's going to happen, and it will happen. Well, I was a little disturbed by that, because I knew in the story of Daniel, the story of Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, when they got thrown in the fiery furnace, that they prayed to God and said, God, we want you to deliver us from the flames of that furnace, but yet not our will, but your will. You are sovereign, and we will accept whatever. We know that you can save us, but if you choose not to, we will still worship you. So I thought that with what this gentleman was teaching, and what I learned from the story of Shadrach and Abednego and Meshach, that sometimes God answers no to prayers. And I felt that this gentleman was setting Christians up for failure. Now, that's just one story, and no one's perfect. And with both of these gentlemen, I saw just a snapshot, but I did my research and saw that they had established a pattern of teaching things that went against the Bible and that made me uncomfortable. So we can't really base anything on one thing, because maybe some things I say might not be correct because I just haven't encountered them in the Bible to get the perfect understanding. But as a rule, I really want to teach what's in the Bible. And as a rule, when someone sets up a pattern that they continually teach things that are converse to the truth that what God wants us to know, that's red flags. Now, I don't have any natural discernment. It grows better as I mature as a Christian. But really, I have to line things up with the Bible to really know and understand who I need to follow and who I might need to avoid. This is a reminder for me to keep my eyes wide open as I read books by other authors, as I watch them on TV, or as I attend their conferences, that I need to keep my eyes wide open, and I need to have at least a working knowledge of the Bible so that I can recognize counterfeit when I encounter it. So good fruit elevates God, and that's really what we want to do. We want to elevate God. Bad fruit and bad trees, they tend to elevate themselves for whatever reason or another. So as I read through Matthew 7, the message that I got and was reminded of is I just need to be discerning. It's a reminder I need to stay in the Bible so that I know what lines up with the Bible, so I can recognize when I'm not getting the real, true, godly message from somebody. Not to judge them, more so, but to seek out and follow the truth. So I hope this has helped you. Please leave any comments that you have. I'd love to hear from you. And I hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope that it's spoke something to you. And I hope to see you next time on an Into the Bible video.